Just the other day, we were having a conversation about the deleterious effects of smoking and how smokers can actually quit. One of the main points that was raised was that smoking is generally an activity that's done more, a habit, an addiction actually, that's done more frequently by the poor than those who are affluent. Smoking is such a great cause of disease and also can exacerbate other conditions. So it's, regardless what your personal thought on smoking is, it eases your nerves, whatever, which it doesn't. It actually makes you more stressed than if you hadn't smoked. It constricts blood vessels and has a very negative action on your stress levels. Nicotine is addictive, so when you go without it, you get edgy, so you connect the relief of having a cigarette with that urge being cured temporarily until the nicotine wears off and you have the same unease. Then you have to have more nicotine to relax those sensations. Once you quit, all of that will go away. Your vessels will relax and you'll be far less stressed. Regarding the statistics in the United Kingdom, a report for Action on Smoking and Health and the Health Development Agency. And it was beneficial in demonstrating a few points, and we'll cover those. This is from the smoking prevalence statistics, and it pretty much states what the majority of our consortium thought. The independent inquiry into inequalities in health identified the fact that not only is smoking prevalence higher among men and women in lower socioeconomic groups, they also have lower cessation rates. Since 1973, rates of cessation have more than doubled in the most advantaged groups, from 25% to over 50%. That's people quitting. In the least well-off groups, there has been a very limited increase in cessation rates, from 8 to 9% cessation in 1973 to 10% to 13% in 1996. These figures suggest that previous health promotion measures and tobacco control approaches have not been effective among the lower income groups. Possible reasons for the lack of success of past interventions are examined later in this report. In addition, they mention that manual and non-manual occupations differ slightly. In 1998, 33% of men and 34% of women in manual occupations smoked, compared to 21% of men and 22% of women in non-manual occupations. Now that's pretty significant because it's over 10%. It's a third more people, so that's pretty significant. More poor people smoking than those with greater incomes and assets. Deprivation levels. That means people who are deprived of something. Further analysis using a system of deprivation scoring shows the gradient becoming increasingly higher. Factors taken into account include occupation, educational level, housing tenure, car ownership, unemployment, living in crowded accommodation, and single parenthood. The following graph shows the decrease in smoking by the most affluent since the 1970s, but in the highest deprivation groups, smoking prevalence has remained constant. Now, we don't find that unusual at all, frankly. It's easy to see how people who are very stressed out by having little money to live on, little means to sustain themselves and to accommodate themselves with things that are comfortable, homes, and other belongings that provide a certain kind of emotional stability, if you will. We are not of the mind that you have to be wealthy to be happy, but there is a link, a correlation between being poor and smoking, and this points it out precisely. Having to live from hand to mouth would probably be one of the most stressful things you could do. We can't even imagine doing it. We've been very fortunate. However, there are people who do live like that, who are barely surviving. One of those simple pleasures for them is smoking, which is counterproductive to their health and is another cost involved. Cigarettes are not inexpensive and they're heavily taxed. So if you're poor and you're spending $3,000 a year on smoking, you could be $3,000 a year less poor by not smoking. There's enormous evidence that shows if the parents smoke, the child has a much greater chance of smoking because they find the behavior acceptable. It's in their home. Their role models smoke. So it's just like racism. If someone learns bad behavior, it's likely to continue unless there's some educated intervention that steers the person back to normality. Now, aside from the obvious problems with coronary heart disease, hypertension, even aggravating conditions like diabetes, there are so many reasons not to smoke. Most people probably think of cancer, but it would actually be heart disease that would be the greater risk for a smoker, in most cases. But getting back to teenagers, there is evidence to suggest that cigarettes provide a crucial resource and support system for low-income teenagers facing life events and experiences from which other children are protected. Pressure for low-income teenagers to smoke can be very persuasive and hard to resist because it may be perceived as more normal to do so. Research undertaken in Scotland states, the strength of normative pressure to smoke was such that non-smokers described having needed a legitimate reason not to smoke as teenagers, such as asthma or a place in the school football team. Adult role models are important in teenage smoking uptake. Quitting by adults, especially by parents, reduces the likelihood of children taking up smoking. Reducing smoking among adults will lead to a reduction of tobacco-related harm. This whole video is for anyone who smokes to quit smoking. And if you're a parent, smoking is absolutely destructive to you each time you do it. There is no moment where you can say one more won't do damage. That doesn't exist. It's detrimental, deleterious, and extraordinarily harmful for you and those around you. Evidence shows that not only is smoking prevalence higher among people in lower socioeconomic groups, they also have lower cessation rates. The following graph shows that in 1993, there was not a major difference between the most and the least affluent groups in quitting smoking. However, the 1998 figures show how much the gap in quitting has increased. Now, this is pretty stunning too, because you can really see it's largely those who have more wealth who have found the ability to quit, whether that's self-discipline, self-confidence. It could be a lot of things. And without examining each person, because people are dynamic, there are other attributes that may be causing these differences. So it is a good general example, though, that people who are wealthier have less stress and are more comfortable, and people who are very poor get little comfort out of life. And one of the things they associate with comfort, you continue to associate that cigarette as a positive thing, even though it may very well be the most destructive thing to you physically and personally. Though all of the material prior to this particular image was part of a United Kingdom study. Here's a U.S. poll done by Gallup from March 21st, 2008. Among Americans, smoking decreases as income increases. Gradual pattern is consistent across 8 earnings brackets. Washington, D.C. The Gallup Healthways Well-Being Index is helping to crystallize the relationship between income and smoking in the United States. Do you smoke? Among national adults by annual income, so approximately 1 out of 10 U.S. citizens who makes beyond the $90,000 threshold annual income is a smoker. 1 out of 10. 1 out of 3 when you don't make much money. That's a very sharp difference. Probably most important to us. Why are people with low income levels less likely to quit? This is the United Kingdom study. It is important to appreciate how hard it is for smokers to give up. Estimates of the chances of succeeding for at least a year in a serious unaided quit attempt are no better than about 1 in 100. That's a 1% chance. It's unbelievably low. If cessation is difficult for everyone, it may be especially difficult for those whose lives are particularly stressful to endure the short-term nicotine cravings and to lose sight of the longer-term gains of much improved health and more disposable income. They conclude with, factors that may affect the poor smoker when trying to quit include motivation, higher dependence, and higher stress levels. That seems pretty obvious, that if you're fighting for your next meal, fighting to pay some bill, fighting to put dinner on the table for your kids, fighting to earn enough to send a child to college, or any number of enormously weighty financial concerns, and the greater wealth you have, the easier it is to manage those things. Paying a bill becomes a non-issue. Your health will improve enormously if you give up the habit, the addiction, and you'll have a lot more money. Depending on how much you smoke, with the prices they are now, wow, you'd be saving thousands of dollars a year. What you ought to do is sit down with a pad of paper. Write down how much a pack of cigarettes costs. If it's $10, put that at the top, $10. Then write down how many you smoke a day. If you smoke 1 pack, that's it. You write that down. Now you multiply that by the days of the year. 365 days. So if you smoke $10, that's $3,650. So you would save right around $4,000 a year by quitting. So you can do the math at any other level. $10, 30 days in a month, that's $300. You're spending $300 a month at a pack a day at $10 to destroy your own personal health and an outbound degree in concentric circles, how damaging that is to others around them. If you have an infant and you smoke in your home, you're an idiot. Plain and simple. You're an idiot for smoking yourself. This is a long-winded video, but the objective is quit smoking and quit now. If you happen to be in a lower income group, you would probably be more happy because you're saving so much comparatively. If, say, for example, you make $30,000 a year, which is not a lot, it's below the national average of about $40,000 a year, which is not a lot at all if you're sending children to colleges. But if you're making $30,000 a year, and if you save $3,000 by quitting, that's 10% of your income. So we would think, if you're smart and poor, you're going to do everything you can to quit. It's also going to cause you more health problems that you'll need doctor's visits for. And those aren't expensive. Even if you have a good insurance plan, you're going to have some co-pays, $20, $25, maybe $50. You might have tests. Those may be costly. Your insurance may not like to pay the entire amount. So there are lots of things that are affecting this. And if money is a concern to you and you smoke, it should be priority number 1 to quit smoking. If you don't eat healthy, worry about that down the block. take care of the biggie right now. Quit smoking.